Buddy, real quickly, we're going to do example 9.2 in chapter 9. The page numbers are different depending on the version of the book that you have, so I'm not going to say the page number, but it's example 9.2. We'll be working through that one. It's a fairly short one, but it'll show you how to do logistic regression. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, so what you can see here is that I have the data file for chapter 9, and this is uploaded in the module. What I like to do is I like to go ahead and copy the data and just put it on a clean sheet. And this is probably what you want to do for turning in homework assignments as well, because it'll all be in one place and I won't have to hunt down your answers. Okay, so we're using the pollution tab, and we're just going to create a new Excel sheet, paste it in there. Okay, so we're just going to kind of follow along with what example 9.2 says. So what it asks you to do is using the pollution file to do two things: estimate and interpret the logistic regression model using illness as a response variable and minutes as a predictor variable, and to predict the respiratory illness probability for an individual who spends an average of 8 hours outdoors without a mask. And I'll mention this a couple times throughout. We're talking about hours and minutes here. Okay, so at one point, we're going to have to convert hours into minutes. And we know that because our column B is minutes. Okay, so it's really just that simple. We need to be in the same type of units to do things that way. So yours might say data mining or data science, either one. It just depends on the version of the software that you have. Mine happens to say data science. So we're going to go ahead and run the logistic regression. So hit classify and then go down to logistic regression. And yours might all populate like mine did, which is very helpful. But what we want to do is make sure that your data range says A1 to B221. And that's just this data over here. You can just cut and grab and drag that if it doesn't automatically populate, or hit this to do that. And then we want to make sure that you have the first row contains headers, because obviously our data does over here. And at the variable input data box, we want to select and move minutes to the selected variable, and then illness to the output variable. Okay, because we're looking at, does minutes help predict illness? That's why we're doing it that way. So just accept the other defaults and hit next. And then we want to make sure that you check the variance covariance matrix here. And then accept the other defaults and hit next. And then accept these defaults and hit finish. We'll let that run. It's running a lot better than it was the other day when I was doing this. I don't know why my computer was lagging. And when I would run these things, it would take forever. So we want to make sure that we're on the log reg output worksheet here. And then we're going to scroll on down, a lot of information. But the ones that we're the most concerned with at the moment are the intercept and the beta, which is what this is for the data that we ran. So I'm just going to go ahead and highlight these as yellow so that we don't get lost in here somewhere. So when we interpret the coefficients, we could just say something like, for A, because that's the first question they're asking, we would just say it has a positive significant influence. Okay, and then for B, we're going to have to actually do an equation here. So this is the equation that's in the book. Let's see, depending on the version of your book that you have. It's on the page before the one with example 9.2. On my book, it's page 309. I've got the 2025 edition. And I think it might be different on the Evergreen edition. They're running two editions at one time. But nonetheless, we're going to be doing that equation there. And what we're going to do this for is it wants us to know the predicted probability. So we're going to calculate this out. Now you see the equation the way the book has it, and we got to translate that into Excel. So we're going to use a lot of parentheses here so that we keep the numerator separated from the denominator, and also that the multiplication works out right and it's not adding or something like that where it needs to be multiplying. So we're just going to put an open parenthesis and then put exp, close parenthesis. Now you can type the numbers in or just refer back to the cell. I'm just going to click on the cell here so I'm making error typing. So it's our intercept plus, and then I'm going to put another open parenthesis, and then our beta for minutes here times. And remember, I said we were going to do hours in a minute, so we want to do it for 8 hours. And so that's 8 times 60 is 480 minutes. So that gives us our numerator, but we want to add, we had to finish closing our parentheses here. So just hit a couple more till it turns black, and then let's do the divide sign, and now we're going to put in our denominator. So we'll start with an open parenthesis, 1 plus, and then remember I said we're going to try to make sure we keep all our math right here, exp, and then another open parenthesis, and then we're going to have our intercept plus, and then another open parenthesis to keep our, because we're going to be multiplying our beta times 480, then the beta for minutes times 480. And then we just got to make sure we get our closed parentheses right. And see, when you get a black one, you know that that meets with the one you had in the beginning. And I think, actually, yeah, that should be right. Okay, yep, 0.34 roughly, give or take. If you type the numbers in, you'll probably get a slightly different answer, but as long as it's around 0.34, we know that that's correct. So that gets us to the end. And if you just turn something like this in for a similar question, you would be good to go. All right. Thank you for your time.